Hello and welcome to another video. So this is the Grand Prix Shadow deck that you guys got a small preview of in the last video, as I did accidentally load up the other game, but that's fine. So this is a mid Shadow deck. Unfortunately the two other decks I am missing a few cards for, which means I couldn't make them, but revisiting mid Shadow was a little bit of an excitement. I don't usually get to revisit mid Shadow just because it has been fairly weak over the course of this expansion compared to previous expansions, but giving it a shot again definitely showed some purpose. The only card that I was really iffy on is Big Soul Hunter, one of the newer additions to this mid-range deck. Necromancy 6, destroy random enemy follower with at least 5 attack. I hardly got to use, unfortunately. In the video you're about to see, I actually never got to use it, so that's a little disappointing. But I can definitely see where it would have some value in like reanimate matchups or ginger matchups or just anything that has a big body really. So we're going to get right into it and take a look. So, first game is Shadow versus Sword, which you would have seen if you checked out my previous video. That was going to be the first game I showed off.
Come on.
Like I said, I do make these videos pretty close together normally and then release them day by day. That gives me time to make sure I have everything in line for what comes next. Anyway, we have Bellinus, Lurching, and Soul Conversion. A pretty good lineup. Being able to remove almost anything with these three cards is absolutely perfect, and it's a good draw engine. Even better, we get the Underworld Aisha, which is amazing to have in the early game, or well, better in the mid, but not too bad in the early game because it means you're not drawing it later. So if you already have a good curve like we have here with really good cards, you don't really need to worry about it. So our Lurching is on board now, setting up a pretty good counter to these hopefully. Not so lucky though, they did go for the Vales, I don't know. Pronouncing things, not my strong suit. But we get to go face, Soul Conversion this, and pretty much just hope we hit. Which we do. Being able to hit that was pretty much perfect. Although this Bellinus doesn't do too well against this 2-1, it does work well enough, especially when they use their spell, which I just don't know if they thought about. Ramming the 2-1 would have been much better than using that spell and losing both, so it was a really odd move on their part. Bellinus the Shining getting to come down again. Unfortunately, we didn't get any Sculling, which was a bit of a disappointment. Sculling is probably one of the more powerful cards in this deck when it comes to flooding the board, outside of course your big cards. This is actually a perfect counter to this Albert, trading into the Bellinus, instant removal, really holding on to those Volv Orbs, probably to do face damage, couldn't really think of anything else. I do decide to throw the D-meter and remove with Soul Conversion, trying to hold on to the big soul just so I can end up removing an evolved Albert or something. But I also don't want to have to spend all of my necromancy on that card. So I found carrots to be actually a huge advantage in this. Being able to use these carrots over and over and strike them nicely with the demonic is really good. Being able to use the Hector just does amazing. Demon Lord, great card. So, Zombie Party is doing okay. I mean, next turn it's going to at least be able to do something, but with how many cards they have played, we're probably going to aim for a little more of a clear than just that. Or actually, we do get to remove the Hedgehog, so Zombie Party is probably the better play, especially lined up with the Demon Lord immediately after. We do end up spending our last Evo point though, on our Zombie. Just making sure they don't buff too hard with the few cards they do actually have on board.
My chest burns with pride.
Then of course Queen, really good trade material there, being able to get optimal value out of it. And they get to remove all of these very easily. So unfortunately I don't stock a full board clear with this deck at all. So no real way to do this other than just summon things and throw things to their face. I do decide to just go for the Prince Catacomb and set up my Demon Lord pretty well and get as many followers as I can so I have as much necromancy as possible. Especially since a single card probably wouldn't have made a huge difference here. Considering knowing what sword runs for their kind of mid-range decks, they're not going to have something like Wilfred or anything big that will buff their board. The best thing they could have probably got, really, I just don't know, maybe Mage is pretty good, but I mean, best case scenario was probably going to have been Fortress, and even that wouldn't have been the best possible card to get. Just a really awkward turn. But we do now have a pretty good setup, being able to trade this carrot in, get its value back, and then have both a skeleton and replayable carrot to go along with this Demon Lord, which should be able to completely wipe this board clean, while leaving a couple of things alive, I think, or at least one thing alive, with that 1 health. So, trading all of that, leaving us with the zombie, sending carrot back to my hand to be reused again when I'm ready, and we still have 12 shadows. Or necromancy, however you want to go with it. I mean, shadows is what they use for some of their terminology, and necromancy is used in most of Shadow's cards anyway, so it's fine. Young ogre, not really doing much other than trading, using its Bane effect to its advantage. And unfortunately, I couldn't use my Underworld effectively due to the ward, so the next best option was to throw Demon Lord with a full board, which means if everything is removed, then Underworld will be viable. And again, we get to keep a few of these zombies around, which is kind of what I want. Just because if they can't remove these zombies, I mean, then we can Catacomb and have an absolutely massive board for the overall turns. Lucky them though, getting some fairly decent cards. They can remove at least 3 total cards this turn. Fatal Spellbomb is an amazing 1-drop spell, so it's not surprising to use it in a really effective way. But they are now out of cards, and we have a very stocked hand. So when it comes to Sword now, they're going to have a very hard time getting me down from this 16 health once I remove this Sword. Especially with Underworld Ruler Aisha coming down, sending one of them to the 2-1 and one to the face is probably the smartest play I can do.
A violation, Casa.
Just because of how effective this turn is.
Finally, someone worthy.
So unfortunately that was really heartbreaking. Losing that to the 5-1 there really hurt me right in the heart. But it's also not the worst possible thing because, again, they are out of cards, meaning that everything we play now is going to be extremely hard for them to remove, especially once we start stocking the board up. And considering Demon Lord can come down pretty easily as well, we're not really worried about anything too major. Not so lucky though, this 4-5 with a little bit of healing, probably the best card they could have got considering they still have an evolve point. Really stocks up their board again, so a little disappointed. Didn't want to spend my Soul Swasher because I really want to get that Demon Lord. That's going to be kind of my big condition to winning this match. And since I can stock with Catacomb, I'm not really losing anything in the overall. Chromatic Duel, another really good turn. Getting a couple of the Queen and King, oh sorry, double Queen. One is listed as a King and other information, but that's fine. Double Queens, full board for them, and protected against any kind of spell or effect damage, which we don't really use much of now anyway.
The bones embrace
So full board of skeletons, plus a really nice proc on this, but we have plenty of places to trade and take advantage of our Demon Lord.
But it was just a game.
So this game was exceedingly long considering. But we do still have one more game to look at after this one. So our Demon Lord does get the play. Really helping us just to secure the board as much as we can. I mean, if they somehow manage to remove all of this again, I would be severely worried.
I should have foreseen
And of course, nope. And we have the concede. Alright, we have game 2 for Shadow. Shadow on Shadow. When you have lolly on lolly violence, it only ends badly.
Come on! Come on, let's play together.
Double Prince Catacomb and a Skull Beast. Keeping one Prince is okay, keeping both would be a little over the top, but getting a Skull Ring on top of this is pretty perfect. Turn 1, turn 3, and turn 4 plays are all lined up nicely. If only we had something to fill that turn 2 gap. So we get pretty decent. We do get something that can fill that turn 2 gap with a Skull Beast and a Soul Conversion. Being able to follow up pretty immediately is great. Especially since we get the extra shadows, which is even better. So 3 shadows for the cost of 1 follower and a spell. Plus double draw. Pretty decent. So double Bellinus from the opponent is a little bit of a pain, especially considering I wanted to go for Scullering Catacomb, which really isn't going to give me much benefit. I don't really have any other option though, so Scullering it is. We do have the Lurching Necro combo for 6, but that's not coming down till a little later. There's their Soul Conversion. Don't know why to go about that way, I guess because you get to keep both Bellinuses, which is pretty good. Otherwise, one Bellinus traded would have been just enough as well. Although you would have lost just that little bit of value. So I decided to go for the Diminutive play, mainly because I know my Scullering should hopefully pull the Lurching Corpse, as long as the 1-1 here now, it doesn't get killed like this. Which I'm pretty happy with. Gloomy Necromancer? Not too bad, especially when you're getting rid of a Soul Squasher. Makes our Evos a little bit safer. So 50-50 on the Scullering. I'm willing to take those odds if we can score. And we do pretty well. Of course, I don't really want to use my Necro Assassin yet because we do have another Lurching Corpse and have no reason to waste the Necro here.
Dance, dear bones of white.
Plus, this Catacomb isn't too bad considering what we have. It means we're going to have a good source of stuff,
This song's for you.
which we should be able to do pretty well with.
Let's do this.
Of course, our turn 6 now is basically guaranteed to be a Necro.
You're breathing too loud.
Being able to remove that, get a skeleton out of it, kill off 2 followers, and go face 3 damage this turn. Really a pretty good turn overall, plus we can set up another Lurching Corpse. Which when comboed with Demon, that is a lot of potential damage. Of course, Zombie Party.
So quiet.
Should have kind of expected that one. We just have lots of options. We have another Prince Catacomb, we have Skeleton Prince, a few more cards to go with this, or we can just go straight up for the Demon Lord, which would be still pretty good as well because we can easily remove everything we need to here. Plus, since Underworld isn't available for a few turns, with everything we have on board now, we're actually going to be able to sit pretty comfortably. So, 10 damage to the face, for us to be pretty well off. If they cannot remove everything here, we win. Even if they do, the odds of us winning increase exponentially with Underworld.
Souls, they're so fresh.
Of course, get the kill.
Hey, why so angry?
So Deathrape Life gives them the Mordecai, which is actually pretty reasonable. So they have managed to remove everything except this 1-1. So I am a little impressed by that play. Of course, will it save them long term? Not really, especially with the Demon Lord off the top, giving us a perfect lethal with our final Evolve point. I mean, 1 Evolve Orb straight onto the Skeleton, 5 damage to face, little Skeleton dude rose to the top. So that sums up Mid-Shadow and Unlimited. This deck was okay. I found it probably one of the weaker decks that I've covered so far, just because of how it functioned. Overall, it still performs, just not as well as I would hope it did. I'm pretty sure draws play a major part in this deck, especially if you don't get exactly what you need on curve. It makes it harder for you to win, but overall, still a pretty strong deck, not too expensive, running very few legendaries and not too many golds either. So if you did enjoy the video, hit the like button and subscribe. You can find the deck list in the description below, and I will catch you guys next time. See ya.